I make $40,000 a month in revenue from running my own hybrid operating business, and in a little over a year, I went from having literally $0 on my bank account to now having served my clients by doing over $600,000 in revenue while working with people who I absolutely love, people I consider friends, running a business that I truly enjoy with over 85% profit margins. And I did this all without ever once going viral and having less than 2,500 followers. And now I'm making this video to show you exactly what I did to make this happen. And if you know me already, you know I do not like bullshit or gatekeeping. So I'm literally going to break you through every single thing that I have done to get to this point. So whether you're a coach, creator, or operator, you can do the exact same thing. Because in my journey building my own business, operating and consulting dozens of info clients, I learned something very important. When I started off, growth was made out to be this really complex thing, and I believed it for a long time. I thought the only way I could land clients is by running ads, going viral, having tons of content pieces, posting 7 times a day. I did thousands of outreaches. I thought I needed a daisy chain of emails, a VSL, a funnel site, all these different things. It was quite exhausting and it didn't really lead to anything tangible. And I know if you're watching this, you've probably gone through the same. And to the best of my surprise, I actually found that growth came from something unironically a lot simpler. Growth wasn't a result of all these really hard efforts. It came from doing the simple things, the things that actually matter and move the needle forward in your business in the right pace and at the right time. And to solve these challenges that my clients and I both had, I designed a model that was simple to follow, that I could use to serve them, and that I also used to scale from 0 to 40K a month. I call this the imminent growth protocol. It exists out of 7 core and simple, straightforward steps that I'm going to break for you down later in this video. But what I do want to communicate first and foremost is that this system is built on my core philosophies. And these are 4 very important things I find necessary to share when it comes to this system because, well, it's built on 4 principles. First of all, honesty and authenticity first, because, well, what is the point of building a business? And if you know me, I talk about this quite passionately. So what's the point of building a business that, well, misleads others, that gets you a profit when you're realistically just hurting or, well, not bringing any value to people? And most of all, what's the point if you're not being true to yourself? Now, the second principle is simple ecosystems instead of complex funnels. Because, well, what's the point of a business that has you run in 20,000 different directions, essentially hating your life, when you can run something that is really fun, simple, and, well, gets you really good results? Then that leads me to the third principle, which is 80% profit and lean teams. I intend to build businesses that have high profit margins and rather lean teams because these are typically also a lot more fun. And at the end of the day, what's the point of making a shit ton of revenue when you barely get to keep anything in your pocket? And then the last principle is about building high intent audiences that love and want to work with you, people who genuinely respect your time and your effort and are happy to be served by you instead of having virality and a ton of shitty followers, because no one ever really scaled by that. So with that in mind, let me run you through a few of my numbers so you understand a little bit of a background of where I came from and how I made this all happen. In January of 2025, my business was running around 12K revenue, and mind you, this is all around 80% profit margins. In February, it's when I had a gigantic spike, as you can see this in numbers as well, and that really happened as a result of implementing and really structuring my ecosystem. From there on, in March, we had a peak at $40,000 in revenue. This is where my offer was implemented and things really started to scale. In April and May, we're hovering roughly 30K. I'm already 25K for May. We're probably hitting a little bit higher than this number here by the end of this month. But the reason why this number dipped a bit is because we're focusing on restructuring the ecosystem to scale even further towards June. Now here's my Stripe. About 70% of my transactions come through Stripe, 30% are wired. And, well, I did roughly 600K in overall revenue for my clients and my business since March 11, 2024, which I'm very proud to share. So to show you how I got my business to this point, I'm going to break this video up in 4 parts. I'm first going to give you a little bit of context of, well, how I started at 0 to even getting to this point. So you understand both how I understood, how I came to these conclusions, how I developed my model. Because my theory is that, well, I can tell you what I did, but if I don't give you the context and the full understanding of how I got to this point, it's very hard to act on it. And the whole point of this video is that you're able to take action. Then I'm going to break this video into 3 following points. This is exactly how I applied my own philosophy and this model to my business, the same model I use for my clients, and how I ended up getting to $400,000 a year. First of all, we're going to break down how I applied this system, then the rules and growth flywheel that I created within my business that actually led to scaling these numbers. And third, the freedom plan, which means, well, how I'm going to scale in a way that I actually enjoy my life. So that's what this video is going to break down. So before I actually started operating and got my business to this point, let me run you through where I really came from because, well, my background is actually somewhat of a creative background. I used to do photography a lot. I think the highest I ever got was $1,000 a month with that business. I then promoted myself to videographer. because I really love the creative arts. Eventually, I went and worked as a creative director for a local social media marketing agency, but the truth is I didn't really feel like I could make a lot of impact there and the pay wasn't the greatest. So I said, fuck it, I'm gonna quit it and start my own business as a content and design agency. Because as you can imagine, with my background in content, I used to think that, well, views are everything in the world. In fact, if I just go viral, get a lot of views, then all my problems will be solved and I'll get clients, right? Well, as you can imagine, that didn't really work like that because virality isn't really a predictable or reliable tool. It gets you a lot of eyeballs, but what's the point if none of these eyeballs are even going to interact with your services or even want to work with you? And no matter how good my content or my services were, I just couldn't seem to get myself consistent clients. And looking back, it wasn't that weird. I wasn't really solving a problem or offering a service that was truly valuable. I just provided a commodity service like content. So I took a moment to reevaluate and thought to myself, okay, what is a good direction for me to go? I have a lot of knowledge on social media working at an agency and I'm pretty good at content. And the logical answer here was, okay, what if I learn how to actually tangibly get my clients results? And given the fact that I am a gigantic nerd and I love learning, I always had a knack for the e-learning space or the info space as I like to refer to it as. So I pivoted into growth operating on the 11th of March in 2024. And it still wasn't butter smooth. The start was great and I had somewhat of a direction, but I still had a lot of unanswered questions. How am I supposed to compete? How am I supposed to get my first client? So I started doing cold outreach. I was grinding for hours, but there was so much to competition and all the gurus online told me, okay, go post more content, focus on virality. It all felt quite cryptic, and you saw all these gurus posting podcasts, doing thousands of content pieces a day, and well, they had ads. I had $0 on my account and I had no idea how to actually make this work. So on the 11th of March in 2024, I decided, okay, I'm going to pivot into growth operating to take this seriously. And I had a bit of direction, but it still felt really vague. I had to get my first client, and of course, I did what everyone else would do. Started cold outreaching. I was on the endless grind, as I like to call it, but it was still rather vague. Because around me, I saw so many other people doing the same thing. The market felt saturated, or was it? Because, well, there was so much competition. There were these gurus running ads, having all these different complex funnels. There were people on podcasts going viral, having thousands of content pieces, and there I was, little Vincent, trying to figure out what to do. So I took a leap. I said, fuck it. I'm gonna spend 5 figures on a mentorship because I knew this is what would work for me, and well, I'm sitting here. And so I got some traction and got started, and I came to an interesting realization because I was just one complete beginner reaching out to people trying to offer my support. And around me I saw all these people with these different funnels, promises, crazy guarantees, like if you don't get your first client in the next 7 minutes working with me, I'm gonna refund your money and pay your trip to Hawaii type crazy. It was pretty bizarre. But around me, when I honestly looked at the market, why were there so many info businesses that were failing with services like these? The negative reviews were quite crazy out there. Why didn't their guarantees always seem to work? Why are there people getting left unserved? And when I'm just being me and being honest, why am I getting responses when I had zero proof or any guarantees? So all of this led to me coming to a realization, because the frustration of what is going on, just wanting to have some clarity and genuinely wanting to provide a service that I know could bring a ton of value to my clients, ended up with me asking a series of important questions. My first was, if people don't want to buy another guarantee, I guess people don't want to buy coaching funnels or solutions. Because, well, the truth is that all these funnels were complicated, complex, and confusing because you've got all these people talking about how there is a one-size-fits-all solution, how the VSL funnel is the best one for you, or the email funnel is the best for you, or you need a waitlist, DM setting, YouTube, doc selling, low-ticket offers. There was so much going on. In fact, I even made this section intentionally quite confusing because this is how my mind was organizing all this information back then. I came to the realization that there is just no one-size-fits-all solution. There is no best approach, and that all of the time, this whole space was just being so polarized. And honestly, it means just selling you something. And if nothing's the best approach, then, well, what do? In fact, I realized that people buy from people they trust. This entire fundamental approach to the info space led to nothing more than lack of trust and polarization of information. Meaning, in fact, how can you make a good decision? So I sat with myself on I think it was a Sunday morning, and I was just like, what if there was just a way simpler, more fundamental approach to growth? What if it didn't have to be all that confusing? Now, preface, this was the question that led to me developing my ecosystem thesis, as I like to call it. I asked myself, what if instead of going for funnels, we would go for an ecosystem? A model by which people don't buy from you because you have the best solution ever and there's a better offer and a guarantee, but people buy from you because they genuinely want to work with you. In fact, in my own personal journey, people ended up working with me. My first few clients, the thing that they actually said that resonated most, which I'm so proud of, is, Vincent, you feel like a human being. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not like I had zero experience. I knew what I was doing, but I didn't have all these gigantic cases and proofs stacked with a crazy Barney bag guarantee that I could run to get a client into my system and convince them to work with me. Instead, people started working with me because they said, you look like a genuine human being, someone who's genuinely going to show up and do their best. And my intention was nothing less than to do the best I could. So what if people would truly connect with you, with your personality, with your why, your belief, your expertise, instead of wanting to just get a quick little fix, a system that just works without any effort, and all these crazy promises. And so I realized that an ecosystem-first approach was what was missing to all of this. One where people respect your values and your business, instead of a system where it's just one size fits all, it doesn't matter who it is, I'm not even working with you because I care about you, I just want money. A system where we focus on quality of our work, quality of the people we have conversations with, quality of our audience, instead of just more numbers, versus a funnel where it's just all about quantity and we don't really care who we're working with because as long as they pay. Third, a simple system, one where everything is just streamlined and makes sense for what you're building instead of complexity and confusion in structures. One where you don't even have to sell. We do it ethically because the people who we speak to genuinely want to work with us for who we are rather than having to convince and hard sell. One where we're offering a service in which we are a class of one because, well, if you're positioned so well that your ecosystem really shines in what you do, well, no one can truly compete with you instead of needing to be a commodity service where there's just tons of competition because every other funnel works better. Where you get to land your dream clients and work with the people you truly love versus, well, having made clients who just are more of a headache, and one that works and creates leverage on the short and long term versus creating leverage on only the short term and is typically high in upfront costs. So this thesis led to me developing my growth protocol, which I'm going to break down for you right now, because the whole point of this system is not to leave you in confusion. It starts off by having clarity, and here's how we break it down. The application of it starts by having an ecosystem first, not a funnel. Typically, the approach in the info space with funnels is, okay, this is where your business is at right now. We're just going to slap in a funnel, run advertisements, get as many people on the landing page, doesn't matter who they are, where they're from. Make sure you find a problem that is big enough for them, get them on that page, let them pay, and you essentially calculate the cost of every acquisition and you scale based on that. Meaning that if your product has a price of, say, $3,000 and your cost per acquisition is $500, you're making a return on your interest of $6. Now, this is just a sum, presuming we're not actually managing or calculating all the other factors. Let's just assume the cost per acquisition in total would be $500. That means that, well, we have a 6 times return on interest. That means if we just bump up our ad spend $10K in ads, $500 acquisition cost, that means we're basically going to be converting 20 clients for a total revenue of, in this case, $60K. Now, great, numbers are fine and all, but you don't really know who these clients are. Doesn't really matter who they are as long as they pay you money, and it's just an approach that basically forces offers down people's throats. Instead, how about we build an ecosystem where people genuinely resonate with you, where it's natural to purchase from you, where your value is so clear that people want to work with you. And we do that by creating and first of all focusing on building the proper offer. That's where we all start. Because if you do not know who you are serving, especially if you're at the start or you haven't scaled past 10K a month yet, it is incredibly intangible and difficult to figure out how to properly serve them or a product to build and bring into the market. And that's also a big flaw with funnels because they basically follow the logic that as long as you get people and eyeballs into the funnel, you'll make a sale. So we focus on first building an offer and figuring out our core audience. Based on that, we build our brand and our messaging. In my case, it's all about being genuine, about being real. From there on, we then attract our dream clients because if people resonate with you and who you present yourself to be, it's going to be rather easy to sell if you can actually present them with an offer that makes sense. From there on, traffic follows naturally, whether it's running an ad, whether it's getting a lot of engagement organically or other channels of traffic, it doesn't matter, but just as long as you get traffic into your ecosystem, you can focus on nurturing your audience, converting them, closing them, and eventually serving them. Now, you might be wondering, Vince, how is this different from a funnel? The point is this isn't pre-required to have a certain funnel built in. We can build a funnel based on what makes most sense through this protocol. In fact, Some of my clients have waitlists, some of them have DM setting structures, some of them even have low ticket offers because it makes the most sense and it is the most sensible for the ecosystem we've built and what truly matters for them, which is serving their clients. And to give you a little bit of context on here's how it worked for two of my clients, Nicole Yen, and you've probably seen her before. There's in fact a video on my YouTube breaking down the exact case, and another client of mine, Caroline. Now, what I want to highlight out of these two is that they both had drastic client transformations. They grew a lot. I'll give you an example. Nicole was at 0 to 4K a month with her business. She had big inconsistency in her sales. She was selling a one-time digital product for $97, and she was selling her hours coaching at $127 an hour. And well, although you might be thinking, okay, cool, she had a digital product, she spent hours in DMs trying to sell because she had to convince people because it was a typical digital product, low ticket funnel. After we implemented her ecosystem in 120 days, she scaled to 70K in total sales, 15 to 20K a month. She had a full offer suite with a high ticket offer, a mid ticket offer, and a low ticket offer. And we ended up working with dream clients, and her ecosystem was incredibly simple. In her case particularly, and you can watch it through the video, I'll have it linked inside of the description. In Nicole's case, we built a high ticket funnel because her audience wasn't gigantic. She didn't have 1 million followers. It made more sense to work with people at a higher price point, one-to-one, than it did, for example, in the case of Caroline. She had a gigantic follower base. And before we started working together, she was stuck under 10K a month. She just dropped her own offer, which was a low ticket program, or a low ticket course actually, at $67, and she was selling her hours of coaching for $197 an hour. She spent also, just like Nicole, hours in the DM convincing people, even though she had that big of a page, and she was relying heavily on virality. And in fact, of course, it was hard to scale her business. She didn't really have a high intent audience. And what we focused on in just 90 days is building her a mid-ticket program, re-nurturing and basically structuring her entire ecosystem. And well, I have a video breaking down exactly how that worked. We ended up doing 25K per month. After that, we have a full offer suite with a one-to-one program, a mid-ticket community program called Phoenix, and her low-ticket offer ended up rising a lot more in price. Now, most of all, our sales became fully automated. We had a coherent and simple ecosystem, and her business was fun to run. She didn't have to do all the crazy heavy lifting, and she had 30K launches. Now, in her case, we had a slight different mechanism. Again, you can watch through this video here, but what we focus on with her is implementing a waitlist funnel. The reason we went for a waitlist funnel is because it made the most sense for the size of her business and where she was at. The point that I'm trying to say here, and what I'm trying to get at, is that they had two complete different businesses, different audiences, different offers, different followings, different ecosystems, and very different funnel mechanisms. Yet we still got them the same results because we followed a fundamental system that worked, that wasn't about complexity, but really about cutting down the noise in their own business. And this system also worked for many more of my clients. Here's a few examples of them: Sophia, Daisy, and Lisa, who are all between 10 to 15K a month and about to pop off. Now, the point that I want to communicate by this system that I find very important to be transparent about is, instead of going from an approach where you're like, okay, no, this is the only funnel that works, that's what I'm going to sell, that's what I'm going to implement as an info business or as an operator, we focus on fundamentally figuring out what it is that our clients, or we, are really good at serving people with, so that we can make sure we actually build a system that works and is simple. And so, well, that's what I focus on for all my clients. That's what's allowed me to do over 600K in last year in overall combined revenue. So all of this led me to a interesting question somewhat around the end of last year, 2024, where I said, well, what would happen, given the fact I've already properly tested my system, it worked really well for my clients, what would happen if I now took a leap and tried it on my own business, which was doing roughly, 10K a month, but I only had 2,000 followers. So I said, fuck it, I'm gonna battle test my own system because I want to prove that this works so that I can also learn from it and refine it. And well, that got me to where I am now as a hybrid operator. I've already showed you the numbers, and I want to break down a little bit of my business setup so you understand where I'm at right now. I have a very lean team structure with a right hand, my head of operations, Lisa. This is a photo of us celebrating a big win in March. That was awesome. Lisa, thank you so much for everything you've done. I highly appreciate you. Just wanted to shout you out real quick. And I work with a bunch of contractors, email copywriters, landing page builders, editors, and automation builders. Hugh, my editor, if you're watching this right now, man, I appreciate you. You're a legend. And at the same time, my role, the whole point of everything I do, is making sure that I lead my business, serving my clients both on a done for you and done with you perspective, because that's where I'm actively interacting with my clients, creating content, because videos like these, they both help me build my own ecosystem, make people understand who I am and what I do. And quite honestly, I love making videos like these to show and put light onto more of this industry, to get rid of all the clutter and confusion, and just to help people, because that's what I love doing. Strategically operating the business, making sure I increase value delivery and updating my service so I can update all of the processes to bring even more value to my clients. And lastly, I work roughly 60 hours a week because I genuinely love it. That's the point of my life. And as you can see here, this is a little screenshot of, or a little photo of, a mastermind session within my community with my students, which is really, really awesome. So now you know the background that got me to all these conclusions, to this thesis, to my growth model that I use for my clients. Let me break down how I actually step by step got to this point. And it all comes to these 3 points, the process. How the fuck did I get to this point? Well, first of all, I had to figure out a way to apply my own ecosystem protocol to my business, because it wasn't that straightforward. I had a lot to navigate. I had to create my own rules, the rules for my business, so that I could actually create a growth flywheel that would eventually lead to the freedom plan, as I like to call it, so I could sustainably scale. So what I had to do is apply the first step of my own protocol to my own business, which is, of course, making sure that I design a offer that makes sense for my audience. Now, to give you a bit of context on how I actually found my audience, well, I already knew who they were because I was already serving them. And over my journey as I continued, I realized that my audience was actually split into 2. I was serving info businesses, creators, coaches, consultants who needed to scale further. These are the people I offered my done-for-you service back then. But on the way in my journey, I was also getting a lot of questions from other operators, people like myself who wanted to learn, hey Vincent, how did you get your first client? How did you deal with this problem in particular? And what I had to do was figure out exact pain points, their goals, and their bottlenecks. I found that operators typically want to learn how to scale an info business and how to grow their own business scaling others. And info businesses just wanted to learn how they could grow. Meaning I had a very similar convergence point for the pain points. And based on that, because I already knew a lot of it and it was validated through my done-for-you services, all I had to do was build the right offers for it. Now, in this case, I used to, when I was serving done-for-you, only have a done-for-you service in my business, meaning I was just offering an agency type service, or I essentially would be the growth partner for my client, take care of everything. But there was a problem with that approach. Now, the problem was that I was very limited when I could serve people this way, because with a done-for-you offer, although it is very great in serving people, you just can't serve every single person, for the reason that sometimes they are not qualified to work with you because of their ecosystem or other factors, because of where they're at with their business right now or their circumstances, maybe because they genuinely do not want a partnership or to outsource parts of their business to an operator like myself, and most of the time because it just, at the end of the day, didn't make sense for the both of us. And this made me realize that there are a lot of people who need my help that I'm not serving, meaning a lot of people are left unserved and a lot of money is left on the table. So I had to develop a new core offer in order to scale my business. A core offer where, of course, what I'm already really good at and what I've always been good at is scaling info businesses to $30,000 a month through a growth-oriented ecosystem. But instead of now only focusing on serving the 1% clients that fit my done-for-you service, what if I designed a type of service where I could serve multiple people through my expertise? And the important thing is that you find your expertise here. For me, this is what it was. And so before I could design exactly what I would create for my offers, I had to take a little moment to zoom out. Because what I had to make sure I fully understood was the customer individual journey, irrespective of the sales cycle of my own business. Now, if you're not familiar with these terms, I'll break them down quite briefly. But the customer individual journey kind of discerns between where your customer is in the journey of making a decision to essentially investing or committing to a product that will help them change their life. Think about it this way. There's going to be multiple stages through which you'll meet people that will discern whether it'll be a sale or work with you or not. The first of that is being, well, are they unaware? Are they aware in the first place of the problem in their journey or something that's holding them back? Do they maybe feel certain symptoms of it? Let's think about it from the perspective of a doctor. You might have a wound on your hand, but you might never be aware that it's going to cause you pain or any potential complications. You might become symptom aware at one point where that wound now suddenly starts itching, or you start seeing some blood on your hand and it hurts. And it might become a problem when you realize if you don't treat that wound, it'll become infected. And the moment you realize that that problem is big enough that if you don't, clean that wound, it might lead to you losing your hand, you'll start looking for a solution. You might find different products like cotton to, dry it up, or going to an actual doctor to get it treated, and then you'll make a purchase. This is the customer individual journey, and it is incredibly important to understand this, because that way you could craft your offers and your sales cycles for your business, because your sales cycle determines where your audience is until the point they actually decide to buy from you. It typically starts with them being somewhat aware of their problems or their symptoms. Through your content or through your ecosystem, they'll eventually become aware of you. They'll be aware of your business, about your content. They'll maybe even resonate with your brand. They'll become aware of the offers you have. And at one point, if they genuinely resonate with you, they'll end up buying from you. And that's how these journeys look like. And the reason this is important is because in the info space, people buy offers for 3 particular reasons. The first, there has to be yes to an outcome that they're trying to get towards, a certain reality they want to experience, a problem they want to solve. That's theirs to decide. And the yes is going to come to whether you can actually help them get there. The second yes you need is to your method, the way you're going to serve your audience. Because, hey, listen, if I'm going to tell you I can help you build your business by snapping my fingers, that's not going to sound very credible now, is it? The method you serve people by has to make sense for them before they can purchase from you. And third of all, the most important thing that I actually think for an offer is you. Did I trust you? Are you the type of person they see themselves working with, who they can believe is worthy of serving them? Based on that, I found 3 methods to serve my audience. Think of it like with music. And I want to emphasize that I didn't build multiple offers just for the sake of making more money. It's because I genuinely believe that I could serve people in a way that made sense for them without necessarily limiting them to my help. Because the question I always ask myself is, if I cannot help people through what I know, then what will happen to them? Will they end up purchasing a funnel or a service that will get them the complete different direction and where they want to go? And I took that responsibility quite seriously. So that being said, I developed my offer in a way for which I could basically go ahead and play the music for someone like a band would. Or I could teach them through sheet music. They can bring their own instruments and I'll show them how to play the music on their instrument. Or lastly, I could just sell them the sheet music so they can play the song themselves. In fact, little reference here, Take Me Back to Eden by Sleep Token, one of my favorite bands. Pretty good song. Anyways, let me break down how that looked like. My first offer was a done-for-you service, like a band, where essentially the rules were simple. This was the type of service I would only offer to the 1% clients, info businesses that I knew I could serve graciously by actually going ahead and taking care of most of the challenges for them, essentially doing everything for them in that business. Now, how that worked, there were rules to every single model and every single offer I had. The first rule for the done-for-you service is that it would only work for 1% clients. I would not do the service and offer it to everyone because I have to align with them. They have to align with my business and my operating style because only that way could I truly serve them. And they would have to want to commit to a long-term partnership of no less than 9 to 12 months. Second, the service that I actually offer them is the full implementation. My team and I, we go ahead and take care of everything for them. Whether that would be, in this case, building their ecosystem, the content structures, the branding, the offer, optimizing it to whatever extent, the entire structure that comes after the ecosystem, the entire funnel, and whatever. And to actually get this running, the setup for that would be a 30% profit share and a 12K starting setup fee for all my done-for-you clients. That's how I position it. And this is an example of a few of my done-for-you clients: Daisy, Lisa, Sophia, Nicole, and Caroline. Now, this is an offer that I only made available for the people I genuinely wanted to work with and take care of the business for them because, well, this partnership would make sense for all sides. Now, the second offer is my done with you offer, in which essentially you bring your instruments and I'll show you how to play them. I'll show you the techniques and I'll give you everything you need to be able to play a song properly. This is my mentorship and consulting offer where essentially the rules are really straightforward as well. I only work with people I truly deem my ideal clients because the point is I'm going to give them my guidance, my energy, and everything that I've learned to be able to grow my business and my clients' business to this point, which means it is incredibly important for me that there is a fit on both sides. My criteria for who I work with are very specific because I do not want to work with every single person. If I'm going to show up, give my all and my energy, as I like to say, my heart and my soul to help people, I want to make sure I can definitely help them. There is a good fit. And well, if I don't like a person for their values or what they stand for, and it doesn't make sense, it clashes with me, I'm happy to say this isn't a good fit for us. There's someone else better out there to serve you. Because when I serve people, I want to make sure I serve them well. And so with that being said, the service looks like this. There's a mentorship and consulting one-on-one aspect to it where they get time with me. Now, the time with me is very important because that's where I truly get to guide them and help them navigate their individual situations. Then there are frameworks, structures, essentially every single thing that I've built inside of my business and my client's business that I'll give them access to through templates and structures that they can can use to scale either their own info business or their client's info business if they are an operator. And then lastly, for the setup of this, it basically is a 3 to 4 month mentorship costing $7K, where there's private one-to-one access. You get access to my community and your own dashboard. And to give an example of a few of my Done With You clients, my mentees, there's Nathan, Angelina, Johnny, Freddie, Charlie, and Hugo. Some of them are operators, some of them are info businesses. To give you a few examples of some results, I love every single one of my clients who I work with. They're awesome human beings. I'm genuinely grateful to be able to guide them, and our values align very well. And for me, that's very important when I am serving. Lastly, there is my music sheet, as I like to call it, which is essentially a do-it-yourself offer where I give you access to the music sheet so you can play the song yourself. This offer is for those who do not fit my Done With You or Done For You services. Typically, it's starters who are really early in their journey and they definitely need the help. They want to work with me, they want to get access to what I've been able to build for my clients, but mentorship isn't the right fit for the point in their journey now. Now, what this means is that I make my frameworks, my systems, trackers, my playbook available to them so they can execute it on their own and still get a lot of value out of it. Now, I typically set this up as one-time offers that I can basically roll out whenever I feel like it's a good moment to provide some extra value to people because I still want to serve. So now that I had developed my core offer, the next point was how do I actually get people into my ecosystem so that I could offer them something that would make sense to serve. And this is where I had to build out my actual ecosystem. Now, the important part about building an ecosystem, the core question is, what kind of content do I make? Where do I show up? What do I do? The way I like to consider this is like world building. What you essentially want to do is build a place, an ecosystem, a world where if people enter it, they get a really strong impression of who you are. Because what you essentially do by doing this is, well, you give them a reason to believe in you, a reason to really follow you along on your journey. And this is where your core philosophy is important. And for me, it was always honesty and authenticity, simplicity over complexity, 80% profit and lean teams, and well, high intense audience over virality. All my content and everything I share online inside of my ecosystem revolves around this messaging. And so I basically had to ask these questions. How do I give someone a true introduction into my world? Who is Vincent really? And this takes a little bit of self-reflection in that you know who you are so that you can truly represent what you stand for. Who do I, or what do I, in other words, stand for and believe in? How do I serve others and why? And of course, the most important question, what is the way that I can most effectively make an impression on anyone else out there? These were the questions that I asked myself, and this is why I designed my entire ecosystem from my Instagram to YouTube to everything else that I share online in a certain way. Because at the end of the day, the point of my content and its purpose was to serve and educate, to create genuine connections, to share the truth and bring light to a lot of misconceptions in the space, and of course, to warm up my audience to my method and who I am, and that I could potentially help them if it made sense for the both of us. And again, this order matters because you always want to serve and educate first. There's no point in building an ecosystem for just purely to sell because people will feel that off of you. And this is why I lead by serving first instead of selling. So I took some time to really build out my brand, my messaging, and based on that, all I had to do was get traffic to my page. And I think this is really important to mention that when you're about to create traffic or a nurturing system inside of your ecosystem, that you, well, consider your initial conditions, because I had to ask myself, okay, Vincent, where do you actually stand? I had a small account, which had less than 2,500 followers, and a very limited ecosystem with not a lot of traffic. I did have strong cases, proof, testimonials when I started doing this, a lot of assets I could share online, like videos like these, and well, I had an amazing service product and the capacity to scale. Meaning, my thesis was, how can I scale without getting 1 million followers, going viral, or needing to bro scale, aka just being unethical and shoving an offer into people's throats? So I built my method, my ecosystem structure optimally through this structure on Instagram and YouTube. I made sure that on my Instagram, essentially that was the core hub where everyone could go, where I would run ads, in this case 10% of my monthly profit. I would essentially use organic content, stories, to essentially get people onto my Instagram where you get to know me a bit. I would initially at the start of my journey do outreaches, which of course were of quite high leverage. And if you once landed on my Instagram, you got an impression of me, I would end up funneling people down to my YouTube where they would get to learn more about my business, like in this video here. After this system was done, I'd redirect them back to my Instagram where we can have a chat. And this is the exact principle I use with Caroline and Nicole. The whole point is that they get to enter your world, learn who you are, build a genuine connection with you first, so that you don't have to go and sell to your audience, which feels icky and sticky and just wrong. I'd much rather guide them to the best decision for them. If that decision is working with you because you can provide them value, that is amazing, and I'm happy for that. But if that's not the decision, then don't force it either, because it is unethical and it makes no sense. You will not truly be able to serve them, and then what is the point of all of this? It goes against the principles that you stand for in the first place, and this is what I also adhere to myself. Once I had my traffic and nurturing system in place, the next question was, okay, I'm creating content consistently, I have an ad, I have traffic running to my page, people come to my Instagram from YouTube, I can now potentially offer them something. But how am I gonna get someone who just landed in my ecosystem to spend money, commit their time to my services so I can help them? So now that I had an optimal ecosystem structure, I had an offer that I knew would bring value to my audience, and I knew how I was getting attention to my ecosystem. The question is, how would I convert these people to actually working with me? How could I get them to actually work with me? Which leads me to the conversion and sales section. This is also one of my favorite sections, and it's a lot of fun. I find it quite challenging, and that's what I enjoy about it. Because the question is, of course, how do you get people, strangers on the internet, to pay you money? And the spoiler here is that it doesn't happen by just making content. Because what I focus on is making sure that it all made sense throughout the entire ecosystem. In my case, I had one core solution and 3 ways of serving people. Done for you, done with you, and do it yourself. Now, at the same time, I could not be delusional. I'm not Gary Vee, I'm not Tony Robbins, I am not Ravi Abufala. I do not have millions of followers who I could just yell at and get them to buy something from me. I had a small audience, but I did have consistent traffic and good nurturing assets. Meaning, okay, how could I optimally close my audience, and what funnel mechanism could I build in so that it would make the most sense for everyone? Which is why I went for DM setting with closing calls as the funnel mechanism, mind you again, of this ecosystem, rather than low ticket, mid ticket, many chats, wait lists, because this is the most impactful way for me to help people. How I did this is I would have inbound conversations with every single person that got inside my funnel. I'd have a chat with them, get to know them, and make sure I can genuinely serve them and bring them value. I would learn about their challenges, their goals, and if it made sense for the both of us, I'd invite them on a call to show them how I could potentially help them. And then of course, I would use my ecosystem assets to actually give them more value and to warm them up before a call so they understand more about what I do and my services. Now, to give you some statistics, here were my March results. I had 30 to 40 actually qualified DM conversations. There were a few more, but these are ones that were qualified, of which I had roughly 50% booked through which I had 15 calls that month, 67% of which were closed. I had 10 total closes, and as you can see, the numbers were quite impressive. I had a total of $54,000 in collected, contracted, I guess you could say, revenue, a total of $30,000 in cash collected, and in total that meant I closed 67% of my conversations. And so you're probably wondering, okay, Vince, how the fuck did you do that? That's actually pretty crazy stats, and it's true, it pretty much is. I'm not trying to flaunt here, but this is the result of having a really well proven and oiled up system. Because, well, the point is that I knew exactly who my audience was. I had a proven offer that I knew would help them. Through my done for you service, I already battle tested that. I had my ecosystem assets in place, meaning on both my Instagram, my YouTube, I had a good amount of content that any person who heard about Vincent entered my world. They knew what I did, they knew what I was good at, and when we had conversations through these inbound messages, I just genuinely focused on getting to really know them, being honest about things, not trying to hard sell them in any way, but genuinely trying to bring them value. Because I knew my customer journeys, I could play to my strengths, meaning I am as I like to call, professional yapper, so I could just actually share value to them. And I got constant instant feedback. Every single time I had a DM conversation or a sales call, I could learn what went well and what didn't go well. And as a conclusion, every single lead I spoke to was almost pre-sold. I had 30x ROAS on my whole business. In that month, I actually spent $1,000 on ads. I don't think I mentioned that, but I did. And on total, 30K in new cash, roughly 55K, 54K in closed amount, all with less than 2,500 followers. And this really does happen when you have a buttered up and well-oiled system. A system that works and plays by your strengths, an ecosystem that doesn't focus on, okay, you just need another funnel, but genuinely one that works fundamentally. Now, this brings me to the second core step, which is implementing a flywheel so that this actually becomes sustainable and scales. And this is really important because a common trap that info businesses and info operators fall into is the short-term hamster wheel trap, as I like to call it, which is an anti-leverage system, not an ecosystem that scales. Because the only way you keep growing is if you keep running in that little system. Basically, you become a hostage to your own business. And look, It was awesome that I could do that in March, but it was important for me that it wasn't just a one-time thing and I could actually build a sustainable business. Because here's what typically happens for info businesses. We spend a lot of money on ads in this case. You get a shit ton of traffic. Awesome. You have a lot of conversions, a lot of calls, a high volume of closing, and you get some clients in, which is great. But then suddenly your time as a coach, info operator, goes down drastically because you have to deliver your services. And you have so many clients, you don't know what to do. And suddenly you don't have any space to take on more clients. Your business doesn't grow. You have a period in which you have a mass almost focus on delivery. And then, hey, you maybe churn some clients and you get back to point one where you have to do more and more and more and more every single time to grow and going through this vicious loop. Now, I did not want to get myself into that loop. I've seen a lot of businesses get into that loop. This is what we focus on not happening with my clients. So, well, how do you actually get out of this hamster wheel? There's two ways to do it. You could go the heavy acquisition route, which again is, in my opinion, anti-leverage and kind of is just like a funnel approach. You build a big team. You go, all right, we're going to get a sales team, a lot of closure setters. Fulfillment is basically having a CSM, a customer service manager, and a head of operations, which I guess you could say would be me. And it's quite high traffic. You spend a shit ton of ad, you just spend more money and you grow more. You just outsource everything. But the problem with that is that essentially you just build a gigantic team. That goes against everything I've ever wanted. And the way that typically looks like is you spend a lot of money on ads, you get more traffic, you build a bigger team on sales where the only real metrics is more people, more numbers, more conversions, more closes. You end up serving more people. And basically the only way your business grows is by getting more people you serve in the exact same way instead of building leverage in the way you serve people. So instead, I went for a model that made way more sense for me in this moment. Instead of having to have more, bigger team, less leverage, more people to manage, I said, what if, another thesis here, I could build a business with more leverage, one where my time becomes increasingly more valuable, both in its worth, but also in the way I can serve. And that leads me to the imminent growth flywheel. Now, the initial conditions are important, which I like to consider myself having quite some skin in the game. On the one hand, I'm helping my done-for-you clients to scale their info businesses from 10 to 30K a month through real-time data that I'm gaining from actually serving them. At the same time, I'm also implementing a lot of theses inside of my own business. And then I have done-with-you clients who are basically actively taking the frameworks and the systems that I use for my clients and my own business to scale. And in a way, I have a constant stream of data coming through, meaning I could have rules in place to build the perfect flywheel. And this is how it looked like. I would test the thesis inside of my business. When I test the thesis inside of my business, I would get takeaways that I would turn into SOPs, standard operating procedures, or takeaways, assets essentially. These assets I would use to then implement these theses into my clients' businesses that I would also get a lot of feedback from, essentially twice the feedback on the same exact thesis, which then I would update in my SOPs and assets. I would give my done with you clients, my mentorship clients, these assets through the one-on-one calls, the community, and their dashboards, which would then help them implement this into their client's business and their own business. I would basically get another perspective on all of this, which I could use to update and create finalized assets through all this raw data, which I could then again turn into more guides, more data, more courses, more reels, YouTube videos just like these, which I can share with others. And off of all of that, I can keep optimizing and re-implementing it into my business, getting even more expansion and repeating it all in all. And as a result, my clients would get better lifetime value. I would get more value that I could provide to a lot of people, and this led to client retention. And to give an example of what this system looks like, if I zoom out, and mind you, my drawings are not the most sexy here, but it's fine. To go back to that initial point where I was in March, I was spending money on ads. It wasn't a drastic amount, but I was spending money on ads. I got some traffic to my ecosystem, which eventually I could convert through DM conversations and close through calls, which I would then serve. But instead of going into that loop again by not doing anything that creates leverage in my business, I said, fuck it, what if? I spent time actually improving my ecosystem and my offer, which would lead to me then focusing on getting improved assets, better content for my program like I just talked about, which eventually lead to me having better content out there, which will lead to better traffic and higher leverage quality of leads, which means better conversations, which I could spend less time converting in. So I could actually spend less time closing because, well, people are more pre-sold on my offer. Because of that, if I would keep on updating my services and my offers and everything I do, I would actually have to spend less time serving people because I would eventually be so much more effective in my services, meaning I could get them better results and better feedback that I can use to continue this process again and again and again. And this is the power of a flywheel, which I really enjoyed building. So now that I got my flywheel out of the way, the last part that's really important is the freedom plan. Basically, how do you make this all sustainable and what's the long-term vision? Because, well, otherwise, how do you run a business? This is the last step that I had to solve for myself. And the question was really, what was the goal for me? For me, it was personally to scale to 75K a month in revenue with 75 to 80% profit. Of course, this number would drop a little bit because as you're scaling, you have to sacrifice a little bit of your profit. And for me, the important thing, and most of all, the numbers and rules were, in fact, a lean team. Like my head of operations, contractors, and a setter would help me through my scaling process. My time was very important for me to be able to spend roughly 50 to 60 hours a week serving my clients, improving my product, improving my ecosystem, making sure that it would be more leveraged through content, through traffic, and through conversions and closing, so that I could spend my time operating my business strategically and continue bringing more value to my audience. And well, based on the entire protocol, I'd say I'm fairly well on track. So this finally brings me to the last part of this video, which is how do you approach this for yourself, for your own business? Whether you're an info operator, a hybrid operator in this case, or you run your info business, because it's a lot of information. But for me, what's important is that you're able to approach this, get a pretty good overview of what matters and what doesn't, so you can apply it to your own situation and scale. Meaning that the first thing I want you to do based on, again, this protocol is find your own music. Find the thing that you are so incredibly good at, that is your offer, the thing that you can truly serve people with, aka your expertise. Once you know your expertise, the question you have to ask yourself is, hey, okay, what results can I bring to the world? What cases do I have to back it up? So when I show and bring my expertise to the world, people will also take me equally serious. And then, of course, who is it that you're going to be serving? Who is your audience in that sense? And think about it in your own journey. Because my own journey, I described the way I had these pains and these pain points and these challenges. That's what I've solved for myself, and now I can serve people with it that way. And if you're at the start, for example, with Nicole, who started at zero, I think it's really important that you create a service that is high touch point, that you get a lot of impact and a lot of really feedback from. You can learn and improve that quickly and actively. That way you can constantly improve your offer. And if you already have a large audience, if you're already at a point where you're quite limited in time, yeah, it makes sense to go for an offer that is less heavy on time on your end. But the point is, you need to make sure that you know how you're solving people. Because then the next step is, how do you create your core ecosystem, which is what I want you to focus on. You need to know what you stand for and believe in. You need to understand all of your audience's challenges, because then you can set the rules for your business and create content that resonates who you are. It doesn't matter where you post that, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn. The point is, let your audience resonate with you. Because I promise you, if they do and you find the right conversion mechanisms and building out your flywheel, which is number 3 of the steps, people will be able to find you online and will like to work with you, which means optimize your traffic sources. If you have a lot of followers and a big audience, then make sure you streamline your audience by creating leveraged content to nurture your audience. If you're at a smaller point in your own journey, then how about you run an advertisement to get the right buyers to your profile so you can actually start having conversations with them. And I cannot emphasize this enough, have conversations with people. If you don't have conversations with people and let them know you exist and that you can serve them, how are you going to serve them? Because based on that, if you actually have good conversions and you optimize for leveraged conversions like I described earlier, you can actually consistently deliver and find ways to improve your delivery, meaning you can create more content to nurture people with, and eventually you can scale with data. And the last step that I want you to focus on is setting your rules. For me right now, I'm prepping to go from 30 to 40K a month to 75K a month with, like I said, 75 to 80% profit margins. I want a lean team with no bullshit. Don't want a lot of headache. I want to spend my time 50 to 60 hours a week serving my clients in meetings with roughly 4 times a week. And I want to be able to serve my core deliverables in a way where I have 6 done for you clients at 30K a month who have 30% profit share with me, meaning I can scale my business to 30, 45K a month. I want to have 20 to 24 done with you clients at one moment I can serve, which makes a lot of sense for my business at a ticket rate of 7K, so I can hit the point of 75K a month. And to top it off, I can do my one-time offers with the DIY services. The point is that these are my rules. And based on these rules, I can create a business that I enjoy. And if you take a look here, this is how my calendar looks like. I have meetings 4 times a week. Of course, when I scale my done with these services more, I'll have more spots taken. But the point is, I have one day, which is typically my Thursdays, where I just focus and make sure I create content or improve my services. On my Saturdays, like today, I'm filming this actually, I make my content and I have a lot of fun doing so. And this is how I like building my business, but it's important you set your rules. And that brings me to it. That is everything I did to scale my own business to 40K a month within, I guess you could say, 14 months with less than 2,500 followers. And that's it. That's all the steps I took. Everything I did to scale my own business from 0 to 40K a month in roughly 14 months without going viral and with less than 2,500 followers. I truly hope that this video helped you, taught you a lot, and gave you a lot of structure and clarity along the way, because I know how difficult it was in my own journey, and my only hope is that it makes it a little bit more clear. And if this did help, then make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'll be making more videos like this. If you are looking for some support along the way in your journey, every month I do open up a few limited spots to work with me one-to-one. So whether you're a coach, creator, or in this case, a info operator, make sure to hit me up on Instagram and send me a DM with the word growth. I'd be happy to see if there's a fit, and if there is, well, we can take it from there. Have a beautiful day and see you in the next one.